This week, we're beginning a module on public services or user services in music libraries. Typically, public or user services departments are associated with reference services, consultations, outreach and marketing efforts, instruction, and programming. We'll talk about instruction and programming more in the next couple of weeks. For this week, I want to focus on the areas of reference, consultation, and outreach. However, it should be noted right away that, especially in an academic library context, these are not completely separate types of service. Reference, consultations, and outreach can all be opportunities for information literacy instruction. There are a few challenges public service librarians should keep in mind when creating and delivering these services. Perhaps the most important is patron lack of awareness. In most cases, whether public library patrons, students, or even faculty at academic institutions, patrons are not fully aware of the services offered by the library or of the kinds of expertise librarians have. This can make it difficult to encourage them to seek out services rather than just collections. Library instruction sessions, assignment requirements to use services, and other systematic exposure of students or community members to the services offered and to the people who offer them can help to mitigate these problems. Patrons may also neglect to use these services because of time pressures with assignments and other time-bound information needs. There's not as much we can do about this except to make services available at the point of need with minimal lead time. That might mean multiple service points, posted information or QR codes, materials embedded in course websites, 24/7 chat services, and so on. Library anxiety is also a phenomenon that prevents people from seeking out library services. Many patrons from all kinds of backgrounds feel anxiety or even shame about asking for help. This can be exacerbated by bad past experiences, inexperience, or feelings of imposter syndrome. Communicating approachability and that there are no stupid questions is critical. On the other hand, some studies of students show that they are often overconfident in their own information literacy skills, so they may not feel the need to seek out help or realize what they're missing. This overconfidence may seem to contradict the idea of library anxiety, but of course they can apply to different people, and there's also the possibility that students who generally overestimate their own abilities are embarrassed to admit the limits of those abilities. The best ways to help reduce these issues seem to be making librarians and their services approachable and using instruction and outreach to make librarians and their services more familiar. Many librarians will have some experience with reference interactions. The traditional model of the reference desk and the ready reference factual question has seen dramatic decline with the increasing availability of information at our fingertips, but new models for reference have emerged. In addition to the in-person query, you may have phone, email, and increasingly chat reference interactions. These all have different pros and cons, of course, but most will follow the same overall pattern. Reference librarians need to present themselves in person or online in an approachable way. When a patron makes contact, showing interest, listening actively, and asking open-ended questions, often called a reference interview, is key. In order to help patrons overcome anxiety and to be sure we're offering the right information, it's very important to be sure you understand the information need, including whether or not it is imposed or forced on them by an assignment versus a personal interest, and whether there are specific criteria they need to fulfill. For music librarians, asking follow-up questions may mean finding out whether a piece is needed for listening, study, or performance, and figuring out what edition is called for. Depending on your library's policies and philosophies, the reference interview may also be an opportunity for instruction, rather than for simply providing the right answer. In many academic libraries especially, you'll be encouraged to be very clear about walking the patron through the decisions you're making and the ways you're searching in order to teach the patron to use the skills themselves. In most reference situations, frontline reference staff will also have the option to refer a question to a more specialized librarian if you aren't able to find the answers relatively quickly, or if you can tell that the question requires more than a brief session. At UWM libraries, we call this the triage model. If those who work the reference desk or chat service, who are usually graduate interns, can't answer the question within about 15 minutes of searching and working with a patron, or if the question is obviously of a specialized nature. They are advised to refer the patron to a subject specialist or contact in the right department of the library. Ideally, after a reference interaction, you would follow up a bit later to see if the patron was successful, though that's easier to do in an in-person setting. If a patron has been referred to a subject specialist or other research librarian by reference staff or through other avenues, the next step is usually a scheduled research consultation. Research consultations often come through reference referrals, or students are encouraged to meet with a librarian by their instructors. Libraries frequently also post forms to allow patrons to request a consultation independently. We sometimes think of research consultations in academic libraries as being a service for students, but they can also be useful for faculty or staff who may be running into a wall in their research or moving into a new area or methodology. In most cases, a librarian will schedule a one-on-one or small group meeting. Unlike a reference desk transaction, a scheduled consultation allows the librarian to prepare for the session, to collect some sources, and to identify potential stumbling blocks, and perhaps even to create an activity or a worksheet to work through in the consultation. Even more than the reference interaction, the consultation is often an individual instruction session, with an emphasis on setting patrons up to continue their project on their own. Less common, but also interesting, are research centers that put the research consultation spaces in a visible place in the library to advertise the service and the library's function as a research hub through the physical presence of librarians and their patrons. Over the last several years, simple reference transactions have become less common, and research consultations have become the focus of both library services and library scholarship in many places. Some of the emerging studies suggest that what patrons, especially students, value about a successful research consultation involves the interpersonal skills and approachability of the librarian, the affective impact of having a reassuring conversation with someone who listens to their ideas and problems and supports their success. Also important to especially effective research consultations is the patron's perception of the subject expertise of the librarian they consult with. This is a nice bit of evidence for the importance of having subject liaison librarians, especially for subjects like music, where the sources and information needs are likely to be markedly different from other subjects. Similarly, it is helpful to have at least a bit of your own research experience in order to understand the process, not only the information sources, and to have your own research experiences and examples to draw on. Finally, public service librarians frequently play a role in outreach and marketing related to library services and collections. Outreach is a broad category of activity. It can include social media campaigns, physical displays, co-curricular activities that reinforce what's happening in courses, as well as just for fun activities, workshops and events, from technical trainings to concerts, and emails and conversations with stakeholders like donors, community leaders, and faculty members. Librarians can embed themselves in classes or hold office hours in the music department or hold pop-up displays at department concerts. Working with advisory boards or friends of the library groups can also be a form of outreach. The forms outreach can take are broad, but the goals are usually about spreading the word about library services and collections, making patrons feel included and supported, and advocating for the library. Outreach can also be a way to further your goals to instruct your patrons and make them stronger users of the library.